This is your government. That means you own it. The owner's manual is the U.S. Constitution.
We're doing Article 1, Section 3, which is about the Senate. We're talking about the legislative branch, talked about the House of Representatives in Section 2. We're now going to talk about the Senate in Section 3. And I think we were up to Roy was going to read, right?
Section 3. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote.
Good. So we have a number of senators here in the Senate, and each senator, 2 senators are going to come from each state, and these 2 senators will come from this state, and they represent the states. And being that they do represent the states, that means they represent the government of the state. This is another one we mentioned before about federalism, which is the relationship of the states to the national government. This is another point of federalism, is how powerful is the Senate, because the states are represented in the Senate. If the states are not represented in the Senate, then the states are that much weaker, and federalism has, it's shifted. The balance of power shifts. So, they represent the states. All right, and they're chosen by the legislature thereof. Now, some people think that it was a bad idea that in 1913, the 17th Amendment made these senators also be elected by the people instead of coming from the states. And why do you think that's a bad idea?
Well, because they could then support legislation that's in opposition to the interests of that state, and that state would have no power to do anything about it. Whereas before that, they could say, you're done, you're out of there, and put 2 new people in there.
That's right. These representatives here, the senators, would represent these people, the power in the state. They would represent the state government. And if they did something that was against the state government, then they would be removed, or they could be removed. They certainly were answerable to these guys. When they are elected by the people, then they're answerable to the people instead of to the state government,
Legislature.
the legislature, the power elite, the rich, the political machine of the state. Okay, so now I see why the 17th Amendment was in there, because the people did not want to have the political machine determining who these senators were. They wanted to have the people themselves do it. Yes, Jack?
One of the most offensive states leading to this change was this very state of Oregon. That the senators would sell the appointment to the U.S. Senate to the highest bidder.
In this other scenario, where the state was selling the seats, probably the highest bidder in the state, then the legislature can be held accountable by the people of that state.
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
Theoretically, right. Another interesting aspect of this is, has anybody ever heard of Machiavelli?
Very practical man.
Very practical man, Niccolo Machiavelli. Niccolo Machiavelli, in his classic work, The Prince, said the prince has to cater to, watch out for, be in control of, make sure he has control over 3 groups of people. One of them is the military. He has to have some kind of control over the military. The second is the mob of poor people, because he doesn't want to have that mob of poor people running through the streets and have to be put down by the military. And besides, the military then are fighting against their own mothers and fathers and sons and stuff, and you got real trouble then. And there's one other group of people that he has to cater to, take care of, watch out for,
The aristocracy.
and that is the aristocracy. Who said that? Good. You've been reading Machiavelli? All right.
No, I was just thinking of Obama.
Or the rich people. Okay. Now, no matter what society you have, and whoever the prince is, whoever the sovereign is, it doesn't matter if the sovereign is a king or the sovereign is the people who write a constitution. It starts out, we the people. The sovereign has to be mindful of these three constituencies. One constituency, the military, we took care of pretty much by saying any military expenditure can only be good for 2 years. Another aspect of it is the commander-in-chief is a civilian, so you're kind of taking care of, you're keeping the military kind of under control there. The people themselves are represented here in the House of Representatives. Where's the aristocracy going to be taken care of? Where does the aristocracy get their voice? Where is the aristocracy heard? The aristocracy is the people that take over this. This group is going to be the aristocracy. We know that this is going to be the rich people. They're the ones that are going to be controlling the states because that's what they do. And so we're going to have them appoint their own representatives in here. This is where the aristocracy, it's in the Senate, is where the aristocracy gets their voice heard, makes sure that they can be heard. Now, in 1913, they stripped this away. The aristocracy had no voice now in a legitimate sense. So now what do we have? We have the aristocracy, the rich people, taking over everything because they have been shut out of what their true place is in this scheme. And that's why we have so much worry about money in elections. That's why we have so much worry about corporations taking over. That's why we have so much worry about, all of that stuff going on, is because they have no voice anymore, so they've taken over everything because they can. If they were allowed to be here, they might very well be content with being right here and having their voice and being a part of the community here.
I suggest there's an alternative view on this, which is they're not taking over. That they are now under the thumb of the bureaucracy, and they must hand out cash to try to get the favor of the politicians who, through administrative power, control them and can destroy their businesses or favor their businesses. They have now become a servant to the parasites who want their money. So they hand out as much cash as they can to this politician and the opposing politician or whoever they think will then smile upon them and not punish them for merely having a successful corporation.
Okay. Wayne,
He hit the nail on the head.
now, you on the video have seen a couple of different viewpoints on this particular situation. I imagine that you can probably think of your own as well. Rick, would you like to read?
Immediately after they shall be assembled in consequence of the first election, they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes. The seats of the senators of the first class will be vacated at the expiration of the second year, of the second class at the expiration of the 4th year, and the third class at the expiration of the 6th year, so that 1/3 may be chosen every second year.
Good, okay. So that means that the Senate is staggered. You have 1/3 of them are in this period of time, 1/3 of them are staggered, and then 1/3 of them are staggered like that. So you always have 2/3 are old hands, 1/3 might be just absolutely brand new, but 2/3 of them are old hands at any given time. House of Representatives, they're only there for 2 years. They can be voted in, they can be voted out. Somebody has to give some stability and some institutional memory of what's going on. If all of the entire House of Representatives could change every 2 years, you gotta have somebody around who remembers what's going on. All right, Barbara?
And if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive thereof may make temporary appointments until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall then fill such vacancies.
And again, since the Senate at this time was chosen by the legislatures, if the legislature is not in session, that's fine, the executive appoints somebody, but then when the legislature comes back, they have to appoint somebody. All right? Want to do it, Tom?
No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained the age of 30 years and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state for which he shall be chosen.
So he's got to be 30 years old, got to be 9 years a citizen, and he has to be an inhabitant of the state. Now, the House of Representatives had to be 25, had to be 7 years a citizen. This is a little bit stricter, little bit stricter requirements than the House of Representatives. All right, any conversation on that? Okay, Bob?
The Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided.
And this again is a little bit of a check and balance between the legislative and the executive, because the executive branch is the President of the Senate, so he can preside over that and has a voice in that, but he still is part of the executive branch. All right, Jack?
The Senate shall choose their other officers, and also a president pro tem in the absence of the vice president, or when he shall exercise the office of President of the United States.
Good, so if something happens to the president, the vice president is now the president, he can't go and be the president of the Senate also. He's being a president. So then you have to have a president pro tem, somebody else who's going to serve as the president of the Senate. Any discussion? Good, okay. Wayne, I think you're up.
The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside.
Now, why do you think that is?
Because the vice president might be loyal to the president.
Or might want his job.
Yeah. Either way.
Okay. And you can go ahead and finish the paragraph.
And no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present.
Good.
Interesting point I just saw.
Yep.
There is no requirement for a quorum. It just says of members present.
Of members present, however, later on, in order to conduct business, I think it's section 4 or section 5, it says you have to have a quorum. In our Senate, with 100 senators now, you have to have, how many are necessary to have a quorum?
51.
You gotta have 51. And what's 2/3 of 51? 34. That's how many would be necessary to convict, because that would be the number that were present. But it's gotta be however many are present. If you wanted to do it in the middle of the night and nobody showed up, you gotta have at least that many, okay? And Bill, would you like to do the last one there?
Sure. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold or enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States.
This is actually fairly important. They wanted to make sure that if you had a guy that was in office and dishonored that office, you could disbar him. You could not only remove him from office, but you could make it so that he could never get back in office again. You want to go ahead and finish it?
Yeah. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law.
Good. So if he took a bribe, you impeach him, you throw him out, he can never hold office, but now he also has to go in front of the criminal courts and he can go to jail or have fines or whatever it is that would be appropriate in that way. But you, by impeachment, can't do that to him.
So did they discuss at some point later the difference between impeachment and removal? Because we did impeach Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
He just was not removed from office.
No, that's because, yes, because the impeachment, it's like when if the police bring a charge against you. We've brought a charge against this guy. Now it has to go to court and be tried. And it's the Senate that tries it. and if the Senate convicts him by 2/3 of the members present, then he's
Or
removed.
essentially, the House is like a grand jury. They say, here's the evidence, looks like he did it. Okay, we have enough evidence to say, yeah, the act was committed. Now then it becomes up to the Senate to do something about it.
Next is Part 8, Setting Up Congress to Do Its Job. Article 1, Sections 4 through 6.